Okay, let's start by cleaning up the boilerplate code that was added to this application. I'm first going to stop this server, and to do that, you're going to press Control and C, like click in the terminal and do Control C, and that kills the server. And then I'm going to go and start looking around and taking things that was sort of put in place as a way of demoing how the project works and get rid of them so I have a cleaner slate and I can start building my application. So for example, in the source directory, I don't want this counter.js, let's get rid of it. I don't want this icon of JavaScript, let's get rid of that. Let's clean up everything in the main file, and let's clean up everything in the style file. And what's more, so there is this Vite SVG in the public folder, and we're going to go and delete that as well. And instead of that, we will drag our favicon SVG and drop it in the public folder. And when it says, do you want me to move it? You're going to say, yes, go ahead and move it. And what else can we do? We can clean up the index.html a little. So let's go here, take a look at what we've got. This is all good. Character set good. Icon, I want to change it. So this is going to be a PNG, and it's going to be favicon PNG. So it's going to use the favicon that we have. The viewport is good. To do app is good. All right, the rest of it looks good to me. What else do I want to do? Let's go and maybe clear the terminal and then do pnpm dev to see what we've got. If you come here, and this needs to be refreshed, and so we've got nothing. All right, we've got nothing in here because I wiped everything in the main JS. So we can maybe go and add like a little bit of a code in here. So style CSS, even though it's empty, we can sort of import it at the top here. So style.css, and then once I like add more to it, then it will be applied to the application. In the index.html, you're gonna notice that I've got one div with the ID of app. I can get hold of it and maybe like add something to it from JavaScript. So let's go and say const app document get element by ID, give it the ID of app, and then we can say app dot inner HTML, and maybe give it like a div. And what else do we want to do? We say hello world. There we go. So there is a little tiny hello world at the top here. All right, I'm going to zoom in for you so you can see that better. All right, so that's it. Very sort of tiny stuff. One thing I want to note is notice that how the HTML only has this one div. This is a pattern you're going to see again. It's very common that when you work with like JavaScript frameworks to build web applications, you don't modify, like there is going to be like one index.html, and it's just going to have like a one div that has a special ID like main, root, app, something like that. And the idea is you kind of get hold of this and build the entire application in your JavaScript and just like mount all of it into the HTML dynamically. So the focus shifts a whole lot on like writing everything in the JavaScript rather than working with HTML and CSS. And we'll experience that more as we move forward in our journey in this course. Okay, so this is good. Let's just stop the server. Let's do a Control C. I want to show you a few other things. So in previous projects, we wrote our own CSS or we used libraries like Bootstrap. And I told you I'm going to show you another library later, which it's sort of the state of the art of what people did, the go-to library for people who build web application. And it's called Tailwind CSS. So here it is, rapidly build modern website without ever leaving your HTML. And it tells you what it is. It is a utility-first CSS framework packed with classes like these ones that can be composed to build any design directly in your markup. So it basically gives you like a lot of classes, and in that sense, it is similar to something like Bootstrap. The difference between this and Bootstrap is that Bootstrap's, the classes it gives you are more component level, like it gives you a button and a card and an accordion, a jumbotron, whereas Tailwind, it gives you more atomic CSS that helps you, for example, center something, change the color somewhere, or lay them out in certain way. put a gap between them, change the spacing between them, change the text size on them. And so it's more fine-grained. So rather than it being a component-based CSS framework, it is a utility CSS framework. And this came out a few years back, maybe more than a few years, but it sort of now became the de facto standard that almost everybody uses this. And so we're going to be using it too. So let me take this as an opportunity to show you how to work with it. The first thing we need to do is to install it as a dependency of our application. And so I'm going to go and put this command in the terminal to do the installation. So there are two dependencies that I'm installing. One is the Tailwind CSS itself. Another one is Tailwind CSS /Vite. So that provides the plugin for Vite, which is my build tool. And the rest is self-descriptive, right? It's pnpm install -d means make it a dev dependency. So hit enter and something happened. And if you go back to your package.json, you're going to see in the dev dependencies, now you have these two added. Right? And if you're like wondering, how do I know I'm supposed to do this? Well, I just read the get us started documentation. Get us started, and the first thing is using Vite because Vite is very popular, right? And I just did, well, we created a Vite already. I just did this, right? So, and I'm just going to continue basically following these instructions to set things up in my application. Okay, let's go back. Oh, that's too bright. Let's go back here and continue adding a few other things. So for us to wire up Tailwind CSS with Vite, we need to create a config file. So I'm going to go create vite.config.js. And so this is a file that when you start the Vite project, especially for vanilla JavaScript, it doesn't create it because it uses all default configuration. But there is a lot of customization that you can do for Vite. And if you want to do them, this is the place to do it. You create one of these Vite config.js, and then you consult the documentation of Vite to see how you can customize all sorts of different things. But right now, what I'm doing is a very minimal customization. The only thing I'm doing is I'm saying that there is a plugin that I installed, and this plugin abstracts away all of the configuration that needs to be in place for Vite and Tailwind CSS to play well with one another. All right, the last thing I need to do is to go here in my style CSS and add this import. And this basically brings in several essential utilities for us to be able to start working with Tailwind CSS. So now that we have this, we can maybe go and do a pnpm dev. And so let's go back to our app. Okay, if you have noticed, it just changed the font and sort of squished the margins around here. But I'm going to show you how you can work with this. Maybe let me just move this a little here. So basically you go here and you say class, and you give it some classes. So let's give it something like, let's say flex, and then say justify center. And then it goes to the center. And it stays there if you move this around. Okay, let's say something else. Let's say I want to bring this to the middle of the page. I need to do two things. Actually, I can show you something. I can say border, maybe border red 500. So that's a border. It shows the boundary of this div. And if I want to make it center in a page, I have to first expand this div to take the entire height of the page. The way you do that is to go and say edge a screen, so height a screen. Now it took the entire page. And then what you want to do is you want to say items center. Now it comes in the middle. And so I think I said this several times before, we're not learning about designing UI. And so you shouldn't worry about learning how to work with Tailwind for any projects. I'm going to show you how to use it. Any homework, I'm going to give you already all the styles in place. But if you are interested in this, Tailwind is a very handy tool in your toolbox as a web developer. And so you can quickly sort of put these utility classes together and compose very complex and sophisticated designs. Now, I don't like the border around this. I'm going to get rid of the border information, but the rest of it is good. So I've got this hello world in the middle, and that's really what I want here. So this is the whole code. That's it. All right, let's stop this. I want to show you one other thing in this video before we wrap it up. I want to use one more tool. So as we go through the course, I'm incrementally adding more and more tools in our toolbox, showing you different things. This one is called Prettier. And Prettier, it even says it here, opinionated code formatter. So this is Prettier. And well, apparently they're selling t-shirts right now. You don't usually see this banner here, but it tells you what Prettier is. It's a code formatter. So it helps you to format your code. And that's good. Why? Because, you know, you want to, usually when you work on a project, especially with other people, like in earlier stages of putting a project together, they come together and they agree on like the style that they want to write the code. And one of the things they expect is that everybody adheres to that style. And if you want to do this manually, it can be tedious, and it can especially get in the way of your if you're not comfortable, like you got to pause and change the ways, your habits. But with this, you can just write code the way you're comfortable with, and then you run the formatter and it adjusts everything to the standard that you established with your team members. So let's go and install this. Again, we're going to just like follow the stuff in their documentation. Like we will take this and we come here and drop it in here. So this adds Prettier as another dependency to our application. Then what we're going to do, we're going to create a config file. So in fact, most of the config that I'm going to be using are default configuration, but I'm going to show you still how you would put the configuration in place. So if you wanted to customize it or add more to it, you can do it. So I'm going to create this file, which is called, it has a leading dot. So it starts with a dot, and then you go and you say Prettier, and then you say rc.json. And here I'm going to be dropping this JSON. There's a lot of configuration, so you can consult the documentation, and it tells you all about like configuring Prettier, all the options that they have, and it's a lot. Well, I dropped in some stuff here. Some of these are default. So like semi-true means always end a statement with semicolon. That's what I like, and it's actually a default setting in Prettier. Single quote false, that's something I like. When it comes to like strings, I like to use double quotation rather than single quotation. Not everybody likes it that way. Tab width, it's more common that people use 4 spaces for tabs. I like to use 2 spaces for tabs. And so I kind of customize it the way I feel it makes the code more readable, and it aligns with how I like to write my code. Now you can, there's also a question of like which files you want these formats to be applied to. For example, we don't want to, well, I mean, you may have like a lot of different things, and like the code in node modules, these are the code from other projects. You don't want Prettier to format the code here, because that's not your code and you never look into it. So by default, Prettier will ignore this. But if you were to configure that, you would create another file, and this one is again leading with dot, and then you say Prettier, and then you say ignore. So Prettier ignore, then here you can list things like node modules, which is again, it is already by default. There's another thing which like we haven't got there, but once we built this project, that build is going to go into another folder that is called dist for destination or distribution, and or we can configure it to be called a different folder, but the default built artifact of Vite goes into a dist folder. And you don't want to format that output, because that is probably minified for production. So all like the spacing are gone, the comments are gone. That's not code that is meant to be readable for people. The stuff you put like in your source directory, that's meant to be readable and for people. All right, so let me show you how like you can run this. So we installed Prettier here, and we can go and use like npx to run it in this folder, and we can say Prettier, and then we can say like run it right now. I mean, you can just like run this by default, and it goes about doing certain things by default. But let me clear this for 1 second. But if you want to provide like some configuration to it, you can do things like this. You can say, I want you to run Prettier on everything in the source directory. You can be more specific to say that I'm specifically looking at everything that has a JavaScript extension, and like look at things that are directly in source folder or in subdirectories in source folder. And then you can say the configuration, use the one in .prettier rc.json is the one that we just created. And then if you just run it this way, it will just check and tells you if it adheres to the formatting rules or not. But if you wanted to actually update the code, then you need to provide write. And so if I run this, it like updates. For example, it says that it ran it against main.js and it updated it. And we can like try like change this to single quotation, right? So that violates our rule. Maybe go and make this a little uglier, like put a bunch of like a space between it. Save this, run this command one more time. And so you see like it cleaned it up. It changed this to double quotation. It like removed those extra spaces. It tried to make our code pretty. Okay, now you don't want to like remember this every time you run it, and that's where the stuff in package JSON is helpful. You can turn this into a script. For example, I can go and create a new command. We can call it format, and then go here, and when you run it from like the script, you don't need to put the npx in there anymore. So you can just get it from Prettier and drop this here. So Prettier, right? I'm putting a quotation inside another quotation, so I need to escape it. So there you go, and this is the config. There we go, now it's happy. And so let me clear this up. Now moving forward, if we want to run it and to show that it has effect, let's ugly this code one more time. Maybe like take the semicolon out too, take the semicolon, put a bunch of inters. All right, ugly code, pnpm format, pretty code, right? There we go. So we've got a good setup going on here for us, and we're going to be looking at some infrastructure concerns in the next video before we start actually building our to-do